What's up, friends? It's Tuesday again, and I'm here. We're doing it. It's happening. So I'm having, as you can see, I'm in the middle of triaging some cables. I had a weird thing happen last week on Learn with Jason, where my camera just gave out, and so I was trying to isolate where in the chain the issue was, and it looks like, I guess we'll see what happens here and how it behaves. But like, as far as I can tell, I think I found the problem. So what happened last week was I was getting like jerky audio or jerky video, right? And then we would get these glitches where it kind of looked like the frame was shifting or dropping or something like that. And so what I just did was, so I got the FX3 running out HDMI to a Atomos Ninja V, and then that runs HDMI out to the Blackmagic A10 Mini Pro ISO. And then what was happening is that was running out via USB to the CalDigit TS5 Plus, and then that ran into the computer, right? But that was doing something weird, and so I tried new HDMI, I tried new USB, and I was still getting the weirdness. So now I've bypassed, you can't really see it, but I've got an extra cable running across my desk here from the A10 Mini direct into the MacBook. And as far as I can tell, that has solved the problem. So not 100% sure what's going on. We're gonna just try to live with it, I think, because hopefully that solves that problem. And in all honesty, there's a decent chance that we're only going to be in this space for a little bit longer. So I'm not gonna stress about it. So yeah. So I'm gonna go live on. Come on, bud. This keyboard, I love a lot of things about this keyboard, but it takes a long time to wake up, which is kind of annoying. But once it goes live, oh shoot. Whatever. I meant to go live for longer, but I didn't. So here we go. Yeah. Just posted on the Blue Sky. Just trying to get all of these posts done that I definitely should have had done before I went live, but you know, who has the time to be prepared for things? Not me. It's been a big week, y'all. Well, actually, it's been a big few weeks. We have been growing like crazy at Code TV, and so the current status of things is I've been in this building, Code TV Studios, since I believe 2023, right? And we got in around like August, September, if I'm remembering the math right. And we had a 3-year lease, which means that we will be renewing our lease at around August, September of this year. I got in at a pretty steeply discounted rate, which was awesome. And I'm kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop on that, where I'm pretty sure the lease negotiation is going to be like, well, we need to get the full rate. And so, you know, I'm going to get hit with probably like a double rent sort of situation. And so I started thinking about that, and I was like, all right, so I'm paying what I'm paying now, and let's assume it only goes up by 20%, but like even then it's still like quite a bit. And so I started wondering, you know, what is that going to mean from a like impact on the business and a long-term sort of thing. All right, yeah, Sevi, let me know if it gets weird. What's up, Zoe? How you doing? What's going on, Paterfamilias? Hassan, how you doing? Thanks for hanging out. but so basically what I'm at right now is we started looking at the books, we being me and my wife, Marissa, and it was kind of like, okay, so what's the right next step for Code TV? And so we had, in 2023 we did okay business. It was enough to like kind of mostly replace what I made when I was at Netlify in 22. In 2024, we had a really good year. We were able to kind of keep growing, keep pushing, and our gross was really good. And then in 25, we broke a million in total billing. And remember, that's not like what I'm taking home, but that's what Code TV billed, right? And a lot of that goes to subcontractors. Like I paid different folks in Portland. I think I paid like $350,000 in like different day rates and stuff to camera operators and hair and makeup artists and stuff like that. Like we had, one of the things that I love the most about this business is how much it lets me put back into the Portland community. But so in 25, we broke a million in billing. And then this year we billed $1 million in January. So a lot's happening. Like it's going real fast, which is great. And I cannot wait to show you the stuff that we're working on. We've got new series coming. We've got kind of like a spin-off mini series of Web Dev Challenge coming. We've got some really fun stuff that we're doing with the Clerk team coming up in probably like April, May-ish. There's a lot happening. It's big, it's busy. We're growing. We've got some really good conversations going right now. Season 3 of Web Dev Challenge is going to start dropping here in probably 2-3 weeks. And so we're cooking here, y'all. Like we're cooking hard. And so the decision then is like, well, how do we make this like sustainable? And so I made the decision to buy a building. So we've bought, and it's still in contract. There's still a million things that can go wrong, but we bought a building down the road a little ways here, and I am so excited about it. Well, I'm excited and I'm like thoroughly overwhelmed because it's a lot of, it's a million things, right? So I'm learning about commercial real estate, and I'm learning about SBA loans, and I'm learning about like I had to make a blueprint, and I've never made one of those before, and so I'm doing it the most inefficient way possible, like in Figma, and like talking to plumbers and electricians and commercial HVAC people, and just starting to talk about sums of money that kind of make my eyes water. But that's what things cost now, because hooray for the US economy, like tripling the price of everything. But so all of that is sort of, it's a little nonstop right now, right? And it's nonstop in the best possible way. Like I have the best problems in the world. But we just did like a big kind of update of the Web Dev Challenge set for season 3. We're in the process of kind of moving through the purchasing on this building, and we're going to see how it goes, but fingers crossed. I feel like we're through the hardest parts, which were like the property condition report, which is where you find like the real deal breakers, like, oh, the foundation's unstable, like can't move forward. Nothing like that came out. There's a bunch of stuff that needs to be done that's going to be expensive, like the electrical system needs to be updated. The plumbing is more or less a do-over. The roof is shot, needs to be like updated. There's but the good news is like that means that once I've moved in, the building will have been kind of reset to zero, and then I'm able to do the maintenance on it and not worry about like whether or not somebody did a good job on the build last time, because I'll have kind of restarted all that work. So I'm happy about that. Like I have mixed feelings about spending giant sums of money, but I also have very good feelings about being confident that like the work was done to a level that we can trust, right? So, the timeline on this is months. If all goes well, we'll be kind of squeaking into the finish line to be into the space and ready to operate by September when the lease is up here. But what that hopefully means is that season 3 of Web Dev Challenge continues in this studio. We'll probably do the whole season here. Maybe a little. We'll maybe have to do a few episodes outside of it, depending on how quickly we get through everything. But like it's gonna be a big busy year. I'm looking at my calendar right now, and I am effectively booked on some kind of production every week between now and like mid-June, which is awesome. Like it's so cool that that's the way that things are shaking out here. Well, like we got 2 this week. We're filming a Web Dev Challenge tomorrow. We've got production in Seattle on Friday. We've got another Web Dev Challenge next Wednesday. And then we have the new one of the new series that we're working on is filming the week after that. And then we're in the final stages of like getting 3 more Web Dev Challenges booked. And then I've got this mini series coming that's going to be 6 straight weeks of filming. And so all of that to say, like, it's never a dull moment here. But so that's a whole thing. We got a lot going on. Yeah, right. Like, oh, I wish. What a cool change of pace that would be. But at the same time, like I'm pushing toward it because I think that would allow me to do a bunch of stuff that I'm not currently able to do. The big push now and always is to be able to reinvest in the stuff that I can't get sponsored. Like there's a bunch of things I want to make that I know they don't have like commercial value, but they have a lot of value to me, and I hope they would have a lot of value to the community. And so trying to figure out how to fund those in a way that doesn't require me to make trade-offs with like paying my rent is sort of that's the big goal. But yeah. What's up, Bridgewater? Donnie, how you doing? Unique Hex. What's going on, Seth? Doing CAD in high school. Yeah, that was sort of what I was pulling on, except I'm like, I mean, it was all vector, but I'm definitely doing pixel pushing. Like my scale, anybody who knows has ever done this before is gonna cringe so hard. My scale is 1 pixel per inch. It's so bad. It's so bad. But that's the only way I can make it work because I think in pixels. Exactly correct. I'm working with an actual architect to get real plans, but I needed to like rough sketch what I wanted to communicate the end state. And it's going to be great. Like, you know what? I'm going to show it. Let me, let me pull up the right thing before I start sharing my screen so that I'm not, where are we going here? You, and then, yeah, here it is. Okay. Okay, so entire screen, this one here, let me get you going, and then I need to switch this over to here. Okay, so this is kind of what we're at right now, as far as the space goes. And so what you can see here is this is a significantly larger space than what we had before, or what we're in right now. And so what we're doing, but so the way that we're set up right now is we've got about 2,000 square feet, and that is where like the Web Dev Challenge set is like stuffed into that, and it's more or less permanent. We don't have the ability to easily swap out for other shows, and what that's meant is that in addition to paying the lease on this studio, whenever we have a bigger production, like if we were to do another season of Elite Heat, which hopefully I'm trying, if anybody knows a company that wants to do some brand awareness work, like hit me up, let's make it happen. But then, we've got we're working on this new series, which is a completely different set, needs a bigger build. We're working on this mini series, which is a lot more people that won't fit into this studio. That means that we're out renting studio space. So in addition to the money that I spend on the lease, we're spending tens of thousands of dollars on renting locations for a couple weeks at a time, or a couple days a month, or whatever it is, which isn't my favorite way to spend money. So part of the upgrade here is that we're going to have a kind of a permanent web dev challenge set in this that I'm calling Studio B, right? And so this will be the web dev challenge set. It's going to be closed off, well, not closed off, but like kind of set up to be permanent there. And then we're going to have this big convertible space here. And so this will be, if we're doing anything new, we'll have the ability to set this up, but this is going to be like convertible. We're not doing a permanent set in here. And so this will have the ability for us to do, if we do the mini series, if we're doing the other thing, we set it up for the days that we need it, but then we're going to be kind of moving stuff out of the way. And we'll have, there's a kind of a mezzanine level. So you can see over here, this space here that I'm ignoring is going to end up being a tenant, like retail of some sort, or an office, or whatever. But we're going to set up the ability to have a couple podcast studios. So if somebody wants to come in and just do a quick recording, we're going to have it set up like this one. I want to be kind of sports centery, where you can do a 4-person podcast, and we'll have the cameras and mics set up so that you can just come in and sit down and hit record. This one I want to be more of an interview style. So we'll probably have 2 sets, like one chairs, like kind of a Oprah style set, and then one that's like a cafe table style set, because I know some people want to sit behind a table. And we'll have those set up so that you can just sit down, start recording. We're going to set up a real green room, get a kitchenette, get some bathrooms. Finally going to get a shower in the studio. This is like a whole thing that I've been working toward forever, because like I have to run straight from the gym in the morning back home so that I can speed shower so that I can get here. And if I get off my schedule at all, I end up having to skip a shower, which then means that like in the middle of the day, I'm trying to get home to like really quickly get a shower in before I move on to my next meeting. And it's just like, it's fine. It's not, I again, not like these aren't hard problems, but it would make my life more convenient if I didn't have to do that. And then we want to have a few other, bits and bobs. Like I want to have key code access to the different studios. So the idea is that if somebody wanted to use it for podcast recording, you don't necessarily need like a big crew to do that. You would theoretically be able to come in and just use a key code and like record and then take off on your own. I might need to have like one producer or something to make that work. But yeah, I think that would be keeping it simple. And then upstairs, we would have kind of a co-working space. Haven't really thought through how that would actually work. And then we'll have some storage back here because when we build out these big sets, there's going to be set pieces and there's always stuff that just needs to be around for later, but isn't necessarily accessed super often. So I want to have kind of a long-term storage solution up there. And then the other part that I'm really excited about is we're going to have the ability to actually put in a gear cage. So right now I have a closet. It's a decent sized closet, but it is definitely like over full, and it's kind of hard to manage right now. You have to move stuff to get to other stuff. And even with the new organization we did, it's just, we're kind of at the brim in terms of what we can store here. So the plan is to get a much bigger space there. That's going to be like a temperature controlled little secure box, so that we can get all the gear in there and also feel reasonably confident that even if somebody breaks into the building, they would then have to also figure out how to break into the gear cage to get to the most expensive stuff we have. We're going to have storage for a van. And part of my goal is I want to be able to rent Studio A, this one over here. I want to be able to rent it to other productions in town because we won't be using it every day. So on any time that we're not using it, I want it to be available to other film companies and producers and directors and stuff in town who want to work on stuff, because there is a lot of film production in Portland. And one of the big stages that we had here just moved out of town, which means that there really aren't any big stages inside Portland proper. And so the thought is that, like, if I can make a space that's well suited for that, it is a great way for me to add additional income that's not dependent on Code TV. It'll be like studio income, which helps me diversify. Like, I'm always trying to think, what happens if, like, Web Dev Challenge runs its course, and it's like, okay, we did 4 seasons and just people don't care anymore, and you're not going to get to keep making those. So how do we pivot? And thinking about ways to make sure that we're not entirely dependent on Web Dev Challenge income is always front and center for me, because I want to do this for a long time, and putting all my eggs in one basket is scary. So having the ability to, like, rent the space to other people, having the tenant in the other side of the building, all of that makes this a little more sustainable, so that we can keep rocking, even if we do have down months with Web Dev Challenge and whatnot. But all of this is set up on the budget of, like, if Web Dev Challenge and everything keeps cooking the way that it is, not assuming the intense growth, but just like sustainable, keeping things about where they are, we can afford, to roll the building kind of indefinitely, right? So there's a lot of potential, and a lot of good upside here. But could have been designed in Sims 4. That is very, very, very true. Yeah, it'll all get pretty pixelated. I mean, this is vector, to be fair. But yeah, I had to use that. Interested to know what kind of equipment you're thinking for the podcast studios. Okay, so here's my initial thought, right? Is in order to film a podcast with 2 or 4 guests, if you do it table style, you would want 3 cameras is probably the minimum. I mean, in a perfect world, you'd probably have 1 camera for each speaker, and then maybe like a medium shot on the 2 speakers on each side of the table, and a wide shot on everybody. That's probably a little overkill to put, what would that be, 7 cameras in a podcast studio, because most people don't want to pay for that, right? And most people don't want to edit that. That's kind of a nightmare to edit. So instead, what I think I would do is probably do a medium shot on a 6K camera. So there's like the Canon C80, or I think the FX6 might do 6K. There's a few others that are 6K. They and the reason to shoot it in 6K is that we would then be able to punch in like a decent amount to zoom in and create sort of like fake an angle of close up on one of the 2 speakers in that medium shot, without losing resolution. And then, so it would be probably you'd have a 6K camera, a 6K camera, and a 4K camera, all pointed. So if the table is here, right, you've got the 6K on these 2 speakers, you've got the 6K on these 2 speakers, and the 4K on these speakers, probably set up for Shure SMB. What are these even called now? I forget. The SM7B microphones. And then we could run all of that, probably do like a Rodecaster Pro 2 and an ATEM Mini Pro ISO setup, because what that would give us is isolated track recording for all microphones and all cameras, plus the ability, if you wanted to have a producer, you could like do it live and have somebody angle switching as you go, which I don't have 2 cameras plugged in right now, so I can't show you, but on the Pro ISO, you've got like a 3 or 4 camera inputs. So if you had the 3 cameras in, you could actually like switch between camera 1, camera 2, camera 3. And if you were doing a live production, like a producer could just do that, right? And you would you'd be able to like do your podcast live with all that configuration. And then you've also got the ability on the Rodecaster, it's got 6 inputs. So you can run the 4 mics in, and then you can also run in like a Bluetooth line so that you could take phone calls, for example, or you can run wireless mics. Like if you've got the Rode Wireless Go Pro, I think they are, or the Wireless Go 2, any of those that pair with like the Rode transmitter or the Rode receiver, you can actually use the Rodecaster as a receiver for at least one, maybe two microphones, wireless microphones. And so you'd be able to actually put a lav mic on people too if you wanted to. So that would give you the ability to then get your 3 video tracks, your 4 to 6 audio tracks, all recorded as like synced ISO tracks. So you could drop those in as like a multicam clip into your editor, and the audio is just kind of, you do whatever you want with that audio, which would make editing like reasonably straightforward. And that's something I'm planning on offering too, is like I work with a couple editors that are earlier in their career. They can just kind of cut to who's speaking and like punch in for good moments and pull clips and whatever it is you want. But, the thought is that you'd be able to come in with your podcast co-host or co-hosts, sit down, record your show, and like you don't really need to do any setup. It would be show up, sit down. We'd have, the light configured in such a way that it just looks good enough. We'd probably do like my hunch is we'd do like a lantern, which is like a hanging diffuser ball, because that kind of evenly lights everybody. We'll set up the mics in such a way that they're visible on camera, just to keep things easy. So you sit down, you record, you get your ISO tracks, and then if you choose, you can pay for the editing, and we'll do like a quick turn edit. And then you can do all that kind of stuff. But equipment wise, it would probably be a reasonably expensive initial setup, because like those 6K cameras run $4,000-ish. Usually there might be, maybe there's a few that run around $3,000. And then the Rodecaster is like $1,000, and the SM7Bs are a few $100. But like once you get it set up, then I think the studio would probably rent for $150 an hour, and it would be about the highest quality video that you could get without building your own set and doing custom stuff. So my hunch is that we'll find a lot of folks around town who want to run podcasts. Like there's realtors, there's business owners, there's like so many people who want a podcast and just don't have the ability to really like film it, that I think would happily pay for all that. But so that's the plan, right? That's the plan. Find a solid gear tracking system. Yeah, probably. Yeah, at the rate things are going, web dev challenge might not make sense as a concept. I think, yeah, I don't know. I think, I hope not. I have a hunch that there will always be reasoning to show how this, like how things get built, even if things are being built in a, AI centric way. But I do think that there's like a lot of, you're still going to need to learn how to use these tools, right? So even if what we're teaching is like the equivalent of teaching like jQuery instead of raw JavaScript, like it's still an abstraction. It's still you're still trying to tell the computers what to do. And I think that kind of turns into a thing. Looks like I missed a question from Uchenal. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. I apologize. Any advice for Nigerians who are looking for jobs abroad? So I think like you're kind of sitting in a tough spot, because Nigeria has all the challenges around collecting money, around there's like I've never seen a country get so much regulation put in its way. So my friends who are Nigerians that work abroad have done a handful of things, and none of these things are easy. They have like moved to Dubai. And that seems to be like the most effective way. I know a lot of Nigerians who have moved to Dubai and are kind of in like a little community, and they all work remote jobs for different companies. They've been able to get bank accounts. They've been able to like really grow their careers. And then many of them were able to use Dubai as a jump off point that led to them getting their visa to live in London or to live in Toronto or to, move to somewhere in Europe. Um, I do think that is, I don't know how realistic that is for a lot of folks. There is a lot of contract work. I know that there are companies that will pay in like crypto, which I think I think crypto works in Nigeria still. I know there's some like different ways to send money around, but like the hardest part is figuring out how to accept money once you get paid, because like you can't get a check or get a money transfer. But there are a lot of companies that will do contract work, right? And so if you are able to give, if you've got the ability to sort of do the work and get paid for that work, then a lot of it is just going to be your network. And I think one of the things that's really challenging for a lot of folks is that it is really noisy out there, and people are looking for a lot of like, everybody needs help and nobody trusts the internet anymore because now everything is AI generated. Everybody's running some kind of a scam or a spams thing. And so the most important thing is going to be having people to vouch for you. So I think like my friend Kenny, Akene Eze, he used to work with me at Netlify. And the way that he got into the community was he just kind of was in communities doing helpful things. He was helping people answer questions, he was writing articles, he was doing whatever he could to get him connected with the folks who were active in those communities, because it made him, instead of being like an avatar on a forum or an avatar in a chat room, he became like a real person that they had interacted with, that they were seeing on Zoom calls, and that they were it sort of like shifted the relationship between Kenny and the people that he was collaborating with, which made it really easy for him later to then ask for a referral or a recommendation. And those carry a lot of weight. If somebody is looking for someone to work with, and you can say, hey, my friend Kenny's looking and he's great. And then Kenny was able to use those first contracts to get himself moved to Dubai, and then he used the move to Dubai to continue building up his network. And he's managed to work for a ton of great companies. He worked for Netlify. He's gone on. He worked in, I think he got a job at a crypto company in the middle of the crypto boom. And I don't know what he's doing now, but he's still out there killing it. And I think those stories are probably exceptions to the rule, but like there are a lot of them, like Christian Nwamba and Gift Iguno and a bunch of folks have sort of taken that similar path of building up their network, making human connections, and then leveraging those human connections to get themselves into better and better jobs, which have allowed them to get to the places that they wanted to be. So yeah, I think, I can't speak from any experience. I'm only telling you other people's stories, but that is what I've seen. And that seems to be a path that is valid, right? Like it's repeatable. Multiple people have been able to do that as a way to get into, and these are like, they're, as far as I know, Gift and Kenny and Christian, and they're all getting paid like normal tech salaries. It's not like they're leveraging like, oh, I'm in Nigeria, so you can pay me a lot less. I think they're making the same amount as or similar amount to the European colleagues that they work with, right? So it's a legit path forward. I do think it's a lot of work. I think that building connections is really hard. I think that and part of it too is like, and this part probably sucks, is the culture match too. Like it's different working in the United States and working in Europe, and figuring out how to sort of like match pace with the way that people talk and interact is, it's hard. Like I remember when I was in Spain, trying to figure out how to match my approach with the way that like folks in Spain were living and acting, and it's not like it was a huge cultural difference for me, but it was big enough that it was a conscious effort to try not to like go in and try to be the American in every situation. I was trying to like sort of slow down and be at least like on board, even if I couldn't match the Spanish rhythm, at least being not like trying to actively work against it or making the Spanish folks feel like they had to accommodate me. I have noticed that there is like moving cross culture, the folks that I've worked with who are clearly making an effort to sort of like mirror the culture they're trying to move into have had an easier time getting those doors to open. And I know there's like that's kind of a minefield, and I don't want to get into it because it sucks that people can't like just be fully themselves, and you kind of have to code switch to like match the energy of the people you're around. But I have noticed that the folks who do that well tend to have really good results. So that is also, you know, a unfortunate but probably true piece of advice. And I think that's about as much as I can talk about because I'm already kind of just repeating things that people I know have gone through and not speaking from my own experience. So I'll stop there. But yeah, good luck, because I know it's tough, but I do think you can do it. Let's see. Flex for inventory management has been a huge upgrade to our warehouse studio gear. Okay. Yeah, man, I have my spreadsheet is so bad. Yeah, no, this is a really good point actually, because I don't have good inventory management right now, and that is definitely going to be a thing. Graduated from one of the university in Kenya. I'm going to unfortunately give you all the same advice that I just gave about getting a job in Nigeria. Similarly, if you're from Pakistan, same thing, right? Like if you get in with folks, if you make those human connections, it's going to be easier, right? It's like the amount of like network connections that you have and human relationships that you have is directly going to correlate to the amount of opportunities that you get. And so find ways to join and participate and be helpful in those communities, and just know that like pouring your energy into making the community stronger, people notice, and they will be willing to help you get more opportunities in the future. And you can look at, you know, there are people from every country in the world who have been able to leverage this approach to like get themselves where they wanted to go. I was just in Japan, and I met somebody who was from Malaysia who had like done the same thing. She really wanted to live in Tokyo, and so she learned Japanese, and she was kind of studying the way they did business in Japan, and like just, you know, kind of went in on making friends and connecting with people, and was able to turn that into a job and a visa, and she lives there now. And you know, a couple of my friends from India, a couple of my friends from Pakistan, they were able to leverage that into getting to Toronto or getting to San Francisco or getting to New York, and they're there now. You know, they've got their visas, they're here, they're working toward residency, and you know, it is a repeatable pattern. I think it's now is not the easiest time to get into the US, but I think that it's a good time to look at Canada. It's a good time to look at some of the European countries, not all of the European countries. I don't know. It's a bad time in the world. I think we will recover from it, but boy, if we're not doing everything on hard mode right now. So many more. Yeah, my spreadsheet wolf is going to be real happy about all of this. Yeah. But yeah, I think, what Hassan is saying here, like be helpful before you're expected to. I think one of the key things that I've noticed is I look around at like, so just anecdotally, I am in a position where a lot of people ask me for recommendations, like, oh, we're hiring for a head of DX, who should we talk to? We're hiring for an engineer, who should we talk to? And the consistent thing in my recommendations has been people who are proactive, people who are curious, and people who genuinely seem invested in like strengthening the world around them, right? Like I think there are people that I know who I don't recommend, and it's not even because I dislike them, but it's because I know that when they get into a situation, their primary motivation is, what can I get out of this, right? And the challenge with that is that in a lot of organizations, teams, communities, etc., if you can immediately tell that somebody's primary motivation is like, what can I extract from this situation? That doesn't mean they won't do good work, but it does mean that they aren't going to make any sacrifices on behalf of the team, and they're not going to like slow down to make sure that somebody feels like they're, getting included or being heard, right? They're just going to sort of like push and take their trophies, and when they feel like they can't get any more, they're going to look for the next thing. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that kind of ambition on a general sense, but from a team building standpoint, I find that the people who make the biggest impact on teams are the people who are they're invested and convinced that the time they spend on building the team isn't like bullshit work they have to do to get to the fun stuff, right? They understand that the stronger the team is, the stronger the community is, the more they get people kind of empowered around them, the more able everyone is to do more and better work, right? Like you get productivity gains, you get morale gains, you get quality gains, and that sort of intrinsic understanding that investing in those foundations gets you better results long term. To me, that is really indicative of somebody who's internalized the idea that like you can't think quarterly, right? This is one of my primary complaints about everything. I think it's what's completely broken business and capitalism, and all the things that are wrong with America right now, I think can be traced to a couple core problems. I've ranted about private equity, and I think one of the major things that drives the badness of private equity is the complete absence of like long-term thought. Because if you're only thinking about returns for next quarter, you're only thinking about like, how does the spreadsheet go up this quarter, right? You'll make trade-offs that you wouldn't make if you looked at what the spreadsheet would do in 4 quarters or in 4 years, right? Because if you, for example, if you think about it like, heat, you want to generate heat, you want to generate more heat. Well, if you cut the whole forest down, you can generate a lot of heat for a quarter. But then there's no more wood, and you can't cut down more forest to generate more heat. And so in the long run, you get way worse results, right? But if you think about like, how do you, like log responsibly so that there's trees growing and new trees getting planted, and you kind of maximize the amount that you can take out without causing a net loss in trees, then you have an infinite source of heat that will sustain everyone for a really long time, right? And so if you think about it that way, the long-term gains vastly outweigh the short-term gain of like, well, for 1 quarter we could have all the heat and then we all freeze to death because there's no heat left, right? It's that sort of like unwillingness to examine, well, what's the downside if we go this hard right now? Like, what happens if we lay off all of our employees and completely shatter morale and like tell everybody that their jobs are doomed, and put all of our money into only one basket because that's where we get all the VC money. This quarter, you get, because you did the layoff, you have lower lower expenses, and because you invested in AI, you have you're able to raise another VC round, and like, so this quarter everything looked great, but like next quarter, when you realize that you didn't actually have a product, you just wrote AI on every slide until a VC sent you $10 million. Well, now you have to like earn that valuation, but you don't have anybody left. And the people who are left are super demoralized because you basically told them you were going to replace them all with AI. And that, entire workforce is kind of sad because like you took all the products they were working on and you crushed them. And you said, instead work on building a chatbot that nobody wants or really has any idea for. And you're like, okay, but who's our customer? And you say, well, anybody, really, everybody can use this. And now you're not actually working on something that has a validated audience or that has an actual use case. You're just trying to cram AI into something because that's what the VCs gave you money to do. So all your best talent is trying to look for new jobs, and all of the rest of your talent is terrified that they're going to get laid off. So they don't really want to like get out there at all. So they don't want to take any risk. They're just trying to keep their jobs. And eventually you end up with this like hollowed out husk of a workforce that in pretty short order, like 2 to 3 quarters, your productivity's down. You can't expect a company that's run by scared and demoralized people to do excellent work. right? And you can see this happen with companies where they have this incredible momentum. And so they scale. And as they scale, they start to look at efficiency. And as they start to look at efficiency, they kill everything that made the company effective in the beginning, right? If you've ever been at a company that grew from 50 people to 300 people, you probably recognize this, where at the beginning, there was all this investment in culture. There was this investment in building stuff because it was the right thing to build and not because you could immediately monetize it. There was an investment in community. There was an investment in like building out the brand awareness and sort of general perception of your company. But then the spreadsheet guys arrive and they go, well, investing in the perception of the company doesn't get us dollars. Cut that. Investing in the morale of the employees is actually a very expensive thing. There's no ROI on that. Cut that. And suddenly, before you know it, you're looking at this company that feels like every other corporate company that can't get anything done and doesn't produce anything and basically punishes anybody for trying to be productive because they're violating processes or trying to spend money that they can't directly link. Like, we spend this dollar and we get $2 back. There's no understanding of like second and third order effects. There's no understanding of what happens after that, right? It's that question of like, okay, if we stop spending that money, what happens? Well, we spent less money. Our profit margin is higher. Okay, but then what happens, right? It's like, oh yeah, well, I guess that, well, we're not going to worry about that because that's next quarter, right? And then you just kick the can and things get worse. And then they start to blame the people who got all their budget stripped. Like, this is why marketing teams get gutted. This is why DX teams get gutted. Is you had a DX team that, and let's use easy numbers, they had $100,000 budget, right? They were able to go out and spend $100,000 on swag, on programs, on hackathons, on prizes, on meetups, on sponsoring events, whatever it is, right? They would go out and invest that money into building out their programs, their communities, all the things that sort of make a DX team work. And that team is killing it. Everybody knows who the company is. They love the DX team. They're seeing all this stuff. They talk about their cool swag drops. They talk about their cool events. They're always kind of talking about, what are they cooking now? What are they cooking now? And then you just start to see them disappear. They're not really posting anymore. Their most influential team members start to leave. And you realize behind the scenes what has happened is that the spreadsheet guy was like, well, what are you spending all this money on swag for? That doesn't get us ROI. We're not going to fund that. Oh, what are you spending all this money on community activation for? That doesn't get us any money. Cut that. We're going to put it into enterprise marketing. And before you know it, this team that had resources, and because they had resources, were able to create momentum, which creates morale, was, they were killing it. And then they just slowly get slowed down because their resources get pulled away because the ROI is a second or third order effect instead of being a direct correlation, or not even a correlation, just like a directly provable, I spent this dollar and I got $2 back, right? Which the only thing you can really do that with is performance marketing. And that's not how that works. It just doesn't work like that in dev. That's not how the industry functions. But so then the spreadsheet guy starts looking at things and says, this DX team really isn't contributing a lot to our bottom line. Now, if you had any ability to actually read data, you would look and you would say, oh, when we cut the funding to the DX team, everything started to flatten out. But they don't think like that. They think, well, this DX team doesn't generate revenue. And so then they lay off the DX team, and then they starve the marketing team, and the marketing team isn't able to get any resources. So they go, this marketing team doesn't get us very much return. Lay off the marketing team. And then the company is just, 15 engineers and a sales guy. And they're like, why don't developers love us anymore? They used to love us. Where did we go wrong? Like, panic, panic, panic. Everybody is now mandated to post on your social media about us once a week. And then they're confused, right? Why this all breaks down. And it's because if you only think in terms of quarters and in terms of immediate returns, you're going to be hamstrung by the fact that like anything good requires nurturing and initial investment. And if you're not willing to make the investment, you cannot get the returns. Like, think about it like money, right? Like, you can't not put money into the stock market and expect to get a return on that investment, right? You have to put your $100,000 in and let it sit, right? You don't get to deposit $100,000 into a mutual fund and withdraw $1 million. You got to let it sit for decades to get those kinds of returns, right? If you're not willing to make the investment, you can't expect the rewards. And the problem is that when you get spreadsheet guys into power in companies, they get told like their objective is efficiency, maximize profit, right? And if that is the goal, they will do it, but they aren't capable of understanding how profit modulates over time because they're not told give us an average uptick in profit that can allow a drop in profit this quarter and next quarter, as long as we see a bounce back in the third quarter that is, that justifies that initial outlay, right? Like, we can spend 2 quarters investing, as long as when it comes back in the third quarter, the trajectory from the third quarter and beyond exceeds the original pace, right? We can't, like, can you imagine a company having a 9-month strategy? Never happen, right? And so I think that's the major problem. And to relate all that back to what we were initially talking about, your career is the same way, right? Like, if you only ever do something when you're trying to get something back, people can smell it, and it doesn't pay you those dividends. If what you're doing is you're genuinely pouring your heart into making the community better, people can smell that too. And if somebody's asking me who I recommend, it's always going to be the person who I think would do this for free, because they're engaged, they're invested, and if you pay them well and give them resources, they're going to do amazing work. The person who's only willing to do stuff if they get the maximum money or the maximum recognition, as soon as they hit a hard spot in the road, they're not going to sacrifice. They're not going to make concessions. They're either going to quit, which is usually what happens. They'll just leave and get a new job, or they're going to become like a huge obstruction in the company, because they'll kind of dig their heels in and get really grumpy that, like, things aren't going their way, right? So if you can treat community as an investment, and you think about sort of making your deposits into the mutual fund of community, that compound interest is huge over time. And if you do give it the years and decades, the amount of career resilience that you have it'll honestly astonish you. And there's, I think people would point to me as an outlier. They would point to people like Sarah Drasner or Emily Freeman or Angie Jones or whatever, and they would say, "Oh, but yeah, I can't do that." And I think, but you can, you absolutely can, right? Like, if you look at what they've done, they just pour into the community over and over and over again, and they always ask for what they deserve. They, I don't walk into a room and say, "I'll do this for free," but I walk into the room and I want the outcome, right? And if I have to make a trade-off and, like, well, I'll put a little bit of my budget into that to get us the outcome we want, instead of, distributing myself a big old bonus. Like, that's been my pattern at Code TV, right? Like, I could have probably taken a lot of money out of Code TV, but it would have cost me the ability to invest in, like, setting up Leet Heat or making Web Lunch or making some of these shows that have really meant a lot to me. I had to be able to put money into those because I couldn't get a full sponsor. I paid half of the first episode of Web Dev Challenge because I couldn't get a company to see the vision entirely. And so I was like, listen, let me split the cost with you, right? Like, I'll take the risk with you. And so, I made $0. I actually lost money on the first episode of Web Dev Challenge, but I was sure that it was going to work. And so I made the investment, right? And I've seen the return. People love the show. We get a lot of inbound interest in people who want to make episodes of Web Dev Challenge, and it's built this entire business for me. And so now I'm looking at it the same way. Like, I could just kind of sit back and just make Web Dev Challenge, and I'd probably make a lot of money, but I don't think that's the way forward. I think the way forward is to keep investing and keep trying to make new stuff and keep finding new ways to engage with the community and to make things that are fun and to try to get people excited about learning. And, even if what they're learning is how to build with AI, you should still be excited about it. Like, how can we make this fun again? How can we make this something that you go back to that original feeling of, like, you're doing magic with thinking rocks. You're taking a sand and teaching it how to do math. Like, that's freaking cool. I love that that's what we get to do for a job. And if we find ways to continue to explore that, it doesn't matter if the agent is writing the code, if you're still having that sense of wonder where you're building something that didn't exist before, and you're thinking about your systems, and you're designing something really cool, and you're coming up with a clever outcome. Like, it didn't make us less of programmers when we got jQuery, or when we got CSS and weren't doing it all in tables, or when we got React and didn't have to, like, handwrite all the logic for everything in a big old spaghetti line of code. And AI stuff doesn't necessarily mean that you're less of a programmer, right? Like, it can, because you can just say, do my job for me. But I think it's the same way that, like, a calculator doesn't necessarily make you worse at math. It makes it possible for you to do certain things faster. And if you turn your brain off and refuse to learn how any of it works, like, yeah, it'll make you worse at math. But if you're curious, then a calculator is just a way to check your work. It's a way to prove that what you thought was true is true. It's a way for you to do stuff that you could never do in your head. Like, I'm not going to be able to do exponential math in my head. I'm sorry. But what I can do is I can, build it in. I can think of why I would need to do exponential math, and then I can have the calculator do that part for me. And then I get the solution that I was after, right? Like, I think ultimately, I think all of that, it comes down to motivations. Like, why are you doing this? What is your intention? What is your goal? And if your goal is to make the lives of yourself and the people around you better, then what you're doing is imbued with that intention, and it feels different than if your intention is, how can I extract as much value as I can at all costs? And I can very plainly feel when somebody is talking to me because they want something versus because they're excited about what's going on in the space, right? Like, having a conversation with somebody who is building something and they're like genuinely stoked that they got to build this thing and they want to show people and they want to talk about it is so much different to me than when somebody says, like, hello, insert your name here. I have created a product and I would like to use your channel to advertise it for free. Can I be on your show? Right? Like, it feels very different. And like, you'll see, sometimes I have people on Learn with Jason who are absolutely talking about the product they built and that they sell. But the way they talked about it, the way they interact with the community feels much more like they're just excited to show something off that they built than like, I accepted this venture capital money, and if I don't make returns on it, like, that sucks. And so please help me make money. That feels different. So when somebody comes at me like that, I'm like, well, no, I don't want to do that show. Or like, you're going to have to pay me to sponsor to do that show. As opposed to somebody who's like genuinely engaged in the community. Like, hell yeah, let's talk about it. That sounds like fun. So I mean, that was like the longest answer in the world. But I do think that it's really, really important. But I know. But look, I'm throwing shade at my own past stories, but at the same time, like, I'm watching this happen over and over and over and over again. Like, everybody I've talked to at some point in their career who's been in it for long enough is seeing that exact same pattern. So like, this is not an isolated incident. This is the life cycle of a company, right? At some point, somebody gets nervous about runway, or gets nervous about revenue, or gets nervous about profit margin, or they go public and they have to do maximum returns to shareholders. And in pursuit of fixing the spreadsheet, they bring in the wrong type of spreadsheet guy. And that spreadsheet guy just absolutely rips the soul out of everything that's happening in the company to gain the short-term numbers. And then they don't care, because they're going to take their bonus and leave. So they don't care that the company is like a hollowed out husk, right? Like, and this is why I get so grumpy about stuff like private equity, because private equity, it will intentionally tank a business if it means that their other businesses see slightly higher returns. Like, they, look at, if you want to get real sad, look up like Red Lobster. Try to find the story of like what actually happened to Red Lobster and why it went bankrupt. It's so depressing, because it's just spreadsheet guys looking at all their holdings and going, well, if we intentionally tank this one, these ones go up by 5%. So yeah, let's do it. And it's just super, super sad. What happened with Tandy Radio Shack? The management team went for years implementing what they believed he was intending when he died. They ran out of ideas, started selling off business units without understanding why they had those business units in the first place. Yes, exactly. Like, I do think like there's a big, man, it's a big messy world out there. And if people are, if you can't, I mean, and it's also hard because like, as a business owner, you should be trying to communicate your vision to your team so that they could continue without you if you were gone, if you sell the business or die. But like, at the same time, like, I think this is part of the reason why businesses should stay kind of small, is like not everything needs to be a multinational conglomerate, right? What's up, Excel Joe? How you doing? Can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket. That's also, that's a sadder way of looking at it. But yeah, I think that's true. But I think, I mean, like the frustration that I feel about a lot of this stuff has been, like, I wish that it was easier to just build a business that was small and not have that feel like you're settling. You know, I think there's this strong push that, like, if you can build a business that does well in your city, well, maybe you can expand into other cities. And if you can expand into other cities, maybe you can go national. And if you can go national, maybe you can go international. And, you know, everybody's trying to build like, you know, you start a restaurant and it's like, wow, your restaurant's doing really well. How do you become Chipotle or McDonald's? And it's like, what if I don't want to? What if I just want to have my business that does the thing that I like to do and it makes enough money that everybody involved gets paid, and that's okay. Like, it doesn't have to hyperscale. We don't need to 100x the return. Like, there in and we didn't take investment, so we don't need to do a return at all. Everything we get is just like a nice little bonus for having done good work. And if we distribute that properly, everybody involved gets a nice bonus for doing good work. Like, what a dream. What a magical way to exist. But somehow that gets called like, oh, you got your little lifestyle business, and it's said like it's derogatory. God, that's a bummer to me. like, like, I don't know. It just seems to me like it should be really cool to be able to build something that like pays you and a bunch of people who care about it six figures to like work on a cool thing. And the fact that that doesn't grow into a billion-dollar business should never be seen as a failure, because like, why do you need to scale? Why does everything need to be a unicorn? It truly doesn't. And anyways, lots of frustration around that kind of stuff. How do you deal with the feeling that skills you spent decades acquiring are subject to evaporation by trillions in VC funding and electrical subsidies? I am choosing, perhaps delusionally, to believe that my core skill set was never the mechanical skills, right? Like, my ability to turn a wrench or my ability to write a ternary operator is not what makes me valuable, and it's not why people hired me, right? The value that my skills provide is the cumulative experience of having solved a lot of problems, and the mechanical means by which I've solved those problems is what makes me fast at it, but not what makes me valuable, right? So my my choice in how to approach this is that nothing that's being built right now is going to solve the core challenges that make people like me necessary. And what I mean by that is, very few people that I have encountered in my life have been really good at having an idea, thinking through how that idea can break down into actionable steps, building out a plan to complete those steps in an order that is allowing them to get like incremental value with each completed step, and building out systems that allow that business to grow and become something that is actually usable and maintainable and scales the way they want it to scale, right? None of the things that I just talked about are directly related to coding. And you could say that about an accountant, you could say it about a lawyer, you could say it about a coder, you could say it about an artist, you could say it about anybody, right? Like, the people who get really good at these things, what they're good at doing is taking the abstract thing of like, you know, what if you made Uber for babies, right? And that general idea this is why I'm not weird about ideas. Like, I'll tell everybody my ideas. I'm not going to make you sign an NDA. I'll tell you exactly what I'm working on, because I don't think ideas are the point. I hear a million good ideas all the time, and I know for sure that most people won't execute on them because it's overwhelming and it's hard and it's fucking boring and miserable to slog through the planning and the who's going to be able to do the work. What kind of expert do you even need if you want to build out something like that? Like, how do you get a roof replaced on a commercial building? Nobody wants to make those calls, right? And so my unique value is my ability to stick through these projects, to solve problems that are hard and weird, and to, to have the follow through and the ability to break it down into something that is both um, doable and that is optimized in a way that it can actually get returns along the way and doesn't require you to just say, well, the only way we can do this business is if we have $1 billion to buy the end state outright. How do you incrementally get from I have $0 to we've bootstrapped this to making, say $100,000, which allows us to reinvest in doing it the way that'll get us to $1 million. That sort of thinking is going to remain necessary. Like, AI is not good at solving novel problems. AI is fine at like breaking down an existing idea into action steps, but it's not going to break those down in a way that is considering like past experiences, or it's going to repeat what's in management consultant blogs. It's going to repeat what it can find on Wikipedia or in the library of books that it's read, um, written by people who are mostly writing from a position of survivorship bias, right? And like, that is fine, but every time you read a book, like at one point you read, you're young and you don't know that he's a monster yet, and so you read Peter Thiel's 0 to 1, and you start to get it in your head that like that's the way that business happens. But then you kind of think about it a little bit more, and you're like, wait a minute, that dude was in the right place at the right time, and he got real lucky, and now he's a billionaire, and it has nothing to do with how good he is at anything, right? Like anybody could have been the right person to pick that right idea and have a good team around you that executes it, and you become a billionaire. So trying to exactly mimic that person's way of being isn't going to get you where you want to go. And having an AI tell you that the right way to become a billionaire is to optimize your sleep or wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, or all these other silly things that the internet will tell you about how people become rich and famous, is, that's repeating what somebody did, not what somebody is, not how somebody like interacts with the world. That's their to-do list, right? And a to-do list is absent motivation, it's absent context. And most people are very bad at including the context of how and why they make decisions. If you sat me down and grilled me for days on how I've gotten to where I've gotten, we wouldn't even scratch the surface of like all the weird little experiences and like one-off things and challenges and problems and mistakes, all the stuff that I've done that has allowed me to have what I consider to be pretty good instincts about building business or building projects or building whatever, is stuff that's sort of hard won through years of getting it very wrong, or through like getting lucky and then, trying it again and realizing, oh shit, that was luck, or realizing that there's an actual skill here and I can get repeatable results through that thing, right? That's this filter of being alive. And that filter of experience is what you get paid for, right? Your expertise, your ability to solve a lot of those problems because you've been there before, right? You can't trust an AI to do that. And you'll most likely never really be able to trust an AI to do that, because at any point it's only going to be able to ingest what other people have said. So the more we say about it, the closer it'll get, but it's not going to have that gut instinct that's like, oh, in this business case, this thing versus this thing, you're going to want to go with this thing because of these like esoteric reasons that are completely unrelated to any of the logic, right? Like, oh, it's just, it's going to feel better. Like, yeah, I can't even explain it. You just got to trust me. And I say that shit a lot. like when people talk to me about why would I make a show this way versus that way? I can't necessarily give you like concrete bullet point answers of why I'm making the decision. It's literally like, I think about it and I'm like, that one feels better. I can't tell you why, but this one's better. And when people trust me, we get good results, right? And that's what they pay me for, is so that they don't have to do that. They don't have to build the instincts. They don't have to make the mistakes. I've already been there. So the hope and the solace that I take from any like big tectonic shift in tooling is that the tools themselves are things that we can learn. And the way that I think about AI is that, I was talking about this the other day. People are feeling there, there's a lot of money to be made in peddling the, like, get on board or get left behind sort of mindset. And I think that, like, anything that is only possible to succeed with if you get in early is a pyramid scheme. And so it can't sustain. And anything that's actually useful is going to be around for a long time. So if it's actually useful, it's going to be around for a long time. And that means that you don't necessarily need to be like elbow deep in the churn. You can wait and see what emerges as a standard, and then you can just learn that thing, right? Like, you didn't have to be around when Knockout and Backbone and Angular and React and all the other frameworks were sort of vying for their supremacy in the JavaScript space, right? You could just wait, and then you see that React and Angular kind of emerged as the two that, like, really stood the test of time. And so you can use either of those tools, and people who learn React today do not need to know that Ember or Knockout or Backbone even exist, right? And that's not to say that, like, because, like, Ember is still in work today. People are still teaching it and building with it and using it. It's a good framework. But you don't have to care about that. You don't have to care about the fact that there was this moment where everybody every day was inventing a JavaScript framework and, oh my God, you got to learn this or you're going to get left behind. This is the future. It doesn't matter. Anything actually useful will still be around, and you can learn it later once the dust is settled, right? And so I'm kind of looking at AI in that way, because a lot of these tools, like the stuff around MCP and agents and loops, and people are talking about Ralph Wiggum, and then somebody at one of the other companies just reinvented the Ralph Wiggum loop, but with a name that is like enterprise friendly, and somebody else is doing some other thing. And, the agentic swarms and self-healing software, and, like, they're just going to keep making shit up. And eventually the dust will settle, and we'll have landed on something that is like, okay, well, this is kind of standardized in the way that we do things, right? If you look at IDEs now, most IDEs work more or less the same way. And that wasn't the case back in the day when you had, like, you're moving from Notepad++ into the Eclipses and the I can't even remember what the hell they were called, but, like, there were a bunch of really interesting, weird tools. They all did things very differently, but they all sort of converged into where now when you open up a tool, it's almost certainly VS Code or a VS Code fork or something that feels very much like VS Code. Even the ones that have nothing to do with VS Code and probably predate it, like IntelliJ, they all feel the same now, right? Like, we've converged on the productive model, and that will happen with AI, right? And we will determine what of this stuff was just people being silly and coming up with whatever they could come up with because they wanted to be in the party, and what of it was actually useful. And then we'll learn the useful stuff, and life will go on. Yeah, that's like a, I don't know, somebody clip that. Like, that's maybe the most I'm going to say that's the most coherent way I've talked about that. And knowing how incoherent that was, I realized the irony in that statement, but it's better than I've done. So feeling pretty good with that. Yeah. Some people can function on 4 hours of sleep a night, and I'm not one of them. I would argue that nobody can function on 4 hours of sleep a night. Which AI model do I prefer to use for my coding? Here's my dirty little secret. I don't use AI for my coding. And there are several reasons for that. One is I don't get to code very much anymore. And so when I do code, I really want to savor the time. And so I'm not trying to go fast, right? And I also, I think I have several things that are potentially in between me and, like, really, really, really steering into AI coding. One is that the longest loop for me in coding is thinking through how the thing should function. And a lot of times the process of building it slowly forces me to think about the way things function. I have long been a big fan of the idea of, like, build it messy to see how the pieces fit together, and then delete the whole thing and build it again to use that concept that you've constructed and, like, notice the ways that it could be better. And I have found personally that when I'm writing with AI, I cannot get that loop to happen. And so what I've found is that the stuff that I write with AI, if it's not something that I've built a million times before and I just need it to function, like I used Copilot to build out a like an Express API because I knew what I needed. It was a simple thing. We weren't like covering new ground here. I just needed the API to function. Copilot did a good job with that. I could review the code quickly. I knew what I was looking for, and it was fine. If I'm in net new territory, which almost everything that I code these days is like a net new thing for me. Like for example, the next big project I want to take on is I want to build out at Proto integration into the Code TV profile system. And so what that's going to look like in practice is I want anybody to be able to authenticate with their at Proto user. So that could be a Blue Sky or a Tangled or a NPMX or whatever system you're using to create your user to get on the PDS for at Proto. And if I'm using acronyms that you've never heard before, I just did a show with Zayu Kapua on Learn with Jason, where in the Web Dev podcast, where you can kind of hear us talk through what all this stuff is and how it works and why it's cool. But the idea is that you'll be able to like use OAuth with at Proto, get your unique ID, your DID for at Proto, and then based on that, your Code TV profile will be able to pull in things that happen on the at Proto. So if you are posting on Blue Sky, I can pull in, one or two of your latest posts. If you are putting code up on Tangled, we can pull in some of your code commits. If you're streaming on Streamplace, we can pull that in. Like anything you're doing, if your blog is using the standard site lexicon, we can pull that in and show your last couple of blog posts, right? Like I like the idea of being able to allow people who are on the show to sort of automatically enhance their profiles just by existing elsewhere on the web. I think that's really cool. I think at Proto is really exciting for that reason specifically. And it also means that I can go the other way where Code TV can publish the at Proto stuff to like put episodes out there and tie episodes to people's DIDs so that if you have your own site, you could theoretically look for Code TV lexicon stuff and pull in anything that you've been on. So if you show up on any of our shows, your DID will be part of that response, and you can actually pull that in and then display like, oh yeah, here's stuff I've been in on Code TV. I think that's really cool. And so we're working on that. We're working on a much better hackathon experience, because the previous hackathon experience, I am ashamed to admit, was ass. So we're going to make that better. We've got dedicated pages. We're working on getting profile badges so that you can, the intention is to be able to like get a badge for each hackathon you participate in. I also want to be able to get badges for like, if you're a supporter, like I want to have a 6-month badge and a 12-month badge and stuff like that. And we want to be able to like show, put some flair on your profile. I think that stuff is cool. So looking at like that kind of stuff, it's all net new, and I don't really know how I want it to work. And there's a lot of nuance in there. And if I just let the AI run at it, I'm not really going to get how it did it. And I'm not going to be able to like think through the choices and how stuff will fit together in the future, because as you may have noticed, even talking about it now, I'm kind of like, there's a lot of dots that I haven't connected. I don't exactly know what it would look like to publish Code TV on at Proto. And I don't exactly know what it would look like to like pull in people's content, because I think that means that I need to like kind of create my own slice of the fire hose that I'm regularly backfilling, and not just like trying to read off the WebSockets every time somebody opens up a page. I feel like I would absolutely like myrtleize my bandwidth if I did that. So all of those things then sort of turn into these like open loops. And if I'm not thinking through that stuff, then I'm going to pay the price for it later when, the AI has coded it up so that it works, but it's not really flexible, and I don't really understand why it's not flexible. So now I'm kind of having to reverse engineer the whole thing to think through how we can change it, right? Like it's stuff like that I haven't found a way to fit it into my workflow that doesn't feel like I am putting myself at risk of like maintenance problems down the road. And I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions about like how to fix that. I have personally not seen them. That being said, like I've used Claude Code, and I think if you're doing stuff that's like things really well, and like, if I was in an agency right now, right, and we were building like client sites, or if I was building marketing sites, if I worked in a marketing department and I needed to like put together landing pages, like, oh my God, I'd be leveraging AI so hard. Like patterns that are repeatable. Like if we're building out pages, if we're building out things that we built before, love it. It's so good for that. My unique situation is that I just don't do that in my job. Like I very rarely am in a position where I'm building something I built before, just through the nature of the way I've like shifted as a coder. Cause I don't even, I mean, honestly, if I'm being completely honest, I am not a coder first anymore. Like I am a like producer first, and a coder as like a thing that I do when I have time. So yeah, but anyways, what's up, Alex? How you doing? Yeah, at Proto I think has really, really cool stuff. Yeah, the 0 to 1 stuff as a whole. Yeah. But yeah, okay. So I actually have somebody coming in at 11, and I don't know if you can tell, but I'm kind of doing the pee dance right now. So I am going to end a little bit early right now. I love you all. Thank you so much for hanging out. We got a good show coming up on Learn with Jason on Thursday in the Web Dev Podcast. So make sure you check the schedule. Come hang out for that. And, keep being awesome out there. Keep having fun. And we will talk to you all soon. Later, y'all.